Hello and welcome to this podcast episode of G-Talk Ask the Expert. GLP is a leading global investment manager and business builder in logistics, real estate, infrastructure, finance and related technologies, and in Europe claims over 30 years of experience in logistics real estate, operating in 12 countries with over 4.5 million square metres of logistics space and another 3.4 million square metres awaiting development. They have over 10 billion euros worth of assets under management across Europe. Now, today I'm lucky to be joined by two experts. One, Stephen Alexander, GLP Europe's Construction Director based in the UK.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Stephen. And joining us from Spain, we have Nere Herrera, who is GLP Europe's Construction Director with responsibility for Europe. Hi, Nere.
Hi. Hi, Paul.
Well, welcome to both of you. Perhaps I could start by asking you to say a little bit about yourselves, what you do in the company and when you joined. Nere.
I've been working for GLP since 2014, and I officially joined the team in 2018. I'm the core construction director, and my role is to keep the construction team aligned and connected across our 12 operating countries. In my day-to-day job, I get a lot of questions from investors regarding Europe, so I do a lot of tracking and a lot of reporting together with researchers. And we are getting more and more sustainability-related questions, so a lot on sustainability too.
Okay, thank you. The same question to you, Stephen.
I joined Paisley as it was 3 years ago, and my role is UK Construction Director. So my day-to-day job, I suppose, involves everything from feasibility, looking at new properties, acquisitions, through to bringing those properties through to development. And that's managing the external team of consultant contractors and taking project delivery from feasibility through to handover to customers. As Nere mentioned, sustainability is a large part of what we do. My role involves responsibility for all things sustainability within the UK.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that a bit later, because today we're looking at design and construction in logistics, and in particular what design solutions you're bringing to your projects to meet not only today's construction challenges, but the challenges you can see coming down the road ahead. Before that, though, perhaps it's worth setting the scene by talking about the upheaval that has occurred in logistics during the past couple of years during this pandemic crisis. I think we all became aware of how important logistics is to the function of so many parts of our daily lives. Suddenly we all know what a global supply chain is and how vital some of the products in the chain are to the way cities, hospitals and businesses operate. And we're also all a bit more aware of the movement of goods around the globe. And we've seen what happens when the system clogs up, like when the Ever Given, a 400-metre container ship, got stuck in the Suez Canal in March 2021. On top of that, during lockdown, we've all embraced online shopping much more than before, creating new pressures and demand on existing warehouses, distribution hubs and supply routes. So how are all those challenges impacting your work at GLP, Stephen?
I think, Paul, you've kind of mentioned quite a few of the triggers, really, which have created what we see as somewhat of a perfect storm. We've been riding the crest of a wave over the past 12 months of massive demand, but also severe constrictions or restrictions on materials. So I just want to take a few points there and talk through the issues that we've seen globally.
Yes.
And the impact specifically on the UK. So COVID is something that obviously has impacted every person globally over the past year and a half to 2 years. And it's had a specific impact on the UK construction industry. Firstly, there was a mass shortage of materials caused by shutting down of factories and of quarries and every other part of the industry. And that happened across the globe, from Korea to us here in the UK. And that meant that there was a brief spell when no materials were being produced, and that led to a material shortage. Now, when you couple that with what's happening in the market just now, with a lot of people's shopping moving to e-commerce, moving to online shopping, these products that are ordered online, they don't come through stores. It's not like you're ordering from Tesco where your product comes through a shop. These products come directly from warehouses. And so there's a huge demand for warehouse space as a result of COVID. and as a result of people moving to online shopping. And although some of that will go back to bricks and mortar purchasing, a lot of that convenience of shopping from home will remain so, and therefore the demand has increased for warehouse space, and the shortage of warehouse space has also become more of an issue within the market. So what you've got is somewhat of a perfect storm. You've got a reduced amount of warehouses, a reduced amount of material to build warehouses, coupled with an increased demand for warehouses. And what that's led to is massive price increases and shortage of materials and labour.
And presumably a few sleepless nights for you as well.
Yeah, a few more grey hairs, Paul, which weren't there pre-pandemic. Yeah. What we're also seeing is a huge impact on the labour side of things. And it's not just people being sick with COVID. It's people that have either left the industry, maybe because of Brexit, they've gone back to other countries or through other better opportunities. For example, the HGV driver crisis that the UK has seen a lot of workers from who would have traditionally worked on site moving from that job where they're out in the rain and the snow to a nice air-conditioned HGV cab. And what that means is there's less people available to deliver the construction services we require. And as a result, the demand, which we've talked about, is so high for these people that the prices are going up. The timelines are being extended to deliver. So as I say, it's a perfect storm.
Is that the same picture in Europe, Nere?
Oh, well, I'm afraid yes. We definitely don't have Brexit issues, but the problems are pretty much the same. COVID has led to a clear supply crisis, and we have an increased demand. So yeah, the appetite for logistics is there, and we have to solve that gap. And as I don't want to repeat what Stephen has said, but yes, the prices are going up. We have delivery times are not trustable anymore. We have, on top of this, we have more and more environmental pressure at the source of the product. China is committing to more and more sustainability initiatives. And on top of that, we have the obvious labor shortages.
Okay. Well, if we assume that some of these are short-term difficulties, although some of them, as you mentioned, our addiction to online shopping is going to continue, I guess. What are the longer-term solutions to meeting this increased demand, and how are you going to address these challenges?
There is not a single solution because it's not a single problem. It's a mix of circumstances. For instance, to reduce the impact of labor shortage, we are challenging the design team, encouraging them to specify prefabricated components. For international delivery issues, we enhance the use of local materials. We are also we try to promote the partnership relationship with our general contractors, working together with them to find alternative but equivalent cost and delivery design and procurement solutions. And I guess we are trying to fix the supply chain where possible.
Stephen, what do you think that some of the solutions are to this supply chain?
The big one we're seeing in the UK is we're moving much sooner. So we're engaging with contractors much sooner in order to discuss the project with them and agree or delve into the supply chain and get that information up front so that we can then plan our projects around what is available and what's deliverable. It used to be that we as a developer or as a client would somewhat dictate the timelines, whereas now that's gone through somewhat of a role reversal, whereby it's the supply chain that dictates what can be delivered. And what we're doing then, therefore, is working very closely with our contractors and with the supply chain, the individual suppliers and individual subcontractors, to see how we can make these processes more efficient. How can we book slots with the steel providers that work with the slots that we get from the cladding manufacturers, for example, to make sure that we get some certainty of delivery. What that does is it de-risks things for us, because at the moment there's an awful lot of risk if we, for example, commit to a delivery program with a customer, and we haven't done that work up front. There's a big risk that we wouldn't be able to deliver that building for them. So this early engagement is critical.
So you're starting earlier and doing a lot more planning and working with the suppliers all the way down the chain.
Exactly. And what that means is rather than traditionally tendering to 3 or 4 contractors, we're doing a lot more open book early engagement with a single contractor, which allows us to go into the detail with the supply chain. Otherwise, we would struggle to do that if we were procuring traditionally via tender process.
Well, let's add in now, that's an immediate response to the supply chain management, but let's just add in this sustainability idea, which is obviously following COP26 last year. It has a huge impact on all kinds of built environment constructions. How important is sustainable construction for GLP?
It's hugely important. It's been very important for GLP. Back in 2009, we issued our eco-template document. It was the first document of its type within the logistics or industrial sector, which stated a minimum standard of sustainability. And we sent that across all of our competitors across the industry in order to try and set a standard for everyone. And we've really moved forward from there. You know, when you go to 2013, we delivered the first BREEAM outstanding building globally. And we've continued that. 2020, we delivered the first net zero carbon building for construction in Milton Keynes. It was magnitude 314. And that was a massive success. That wasn't just offsetting a massive amount of carbon. That was going through every element of the building, looking at the steel, looking at the concrete, looking at how we design the building, how we deliver the building. And we had specialists from suppliers to contractors to university academics, all involved with our consultant team to get to a point where we reduce the carbon as much as possible. Obviously, you can't build a building without any carbon, and therefore we offset the remainder of the carbon via gold standard methods. And what that actually does is it goes to a developing country and invests money in the developing country to reduce their carbon footprint and therefore offsets the carbon we've produced within our project. So it has a huge socio-economic impact and betterment in these areas.
And just coming to Nere, is that you mentioned right at the start how you're keeping all your teams in line. Is this design guide and the design principles an important part of that?
Well, it's basic for that. I would say it's the part of that route that Stephen has mentioned that started in 2009. The design guide is the last document we have issued, and it has all kind of tips for designers, general contractors, supply chain providers in terms of sustainability. It's the ABC of our design and procurement. As the UK is doing, we are also starting to measure the CO2 emissions of our developments. Not only the embodied carbon, but also the operational carbon, the expected operational carbon of the assets. And this shows that sustainability is a more and more precise science. We have to disclose the CO2 tons of our activity. It's an accurate topic and increasing in importance.
That's some of the reporting that you're having to do to investors on the assets that you mentioned earlier.
That's right.
Yeah.
A lot of numbers.
Okay, but then with some of these more immediate challenges, how are you operating with that design guide and this changing availability of materials in the different countries in Europe?
The issue is there, and we are trying our best to solve it. One of the solutions is what Stephen has mentioned, trying to engage with the general contractors as soon as possible and changing that tendering approach. We've seen issues with materials, with all kind of materials. We used to build with timber in France. Nowadays, because the steel had a big increase in prices, the peers and the industry has moved to wood, and we don't have wood anymore. So we have to be trying to find alternative solutions on a daily basis. The latest news that I have gathered from the teams are the concrete. It's what started, the issue that started with the steel has moved to concrete now. And we do have a lot of concrete in our constructions. So again, trying to find the best formula to absorb those impacts.
Yes. With this different countries now operating different sustainability laws, how's that sustainability agenda manifesting here in the UK, Stephen?
We're seeing new initiatives come through into law at the moment. One that came in the past few months was Biodiversity Net Gain. And what that means is we need a minimum of 10% increase in the biodiversity net gain on a site. And the knock-on effect is that we need to redesign our sites. We need to make sure that there is enough space left for that biodiversity, be that areas of woodland or planting or even wetlands. That can have a big impact on schemes if you're not aware of it. One of the things we are doing, which isn't within the legislation, but we do because we think it's the right thing to do, is we measure our social value. We look at how much we're bringing to an area in a monetary term. So that involves us looking at the area, what the needs are of the area, and then specifically applying certain measures to help. For example, if there's an area with long-term unemployed or high numbers of long-term unemployed people, we ask our contractor to employ a minimum of 2 or 3 long-term unemployed people for the duration of the project. And the impact on that in monetary terms isn't just the money that those people earn for the 6 months or 12 months they're working on site. It's the experience that they get from that, and therefore the long-term employment they can seek as a result of having that experience. So there are a number of things we do on all of our sites in order to increase the social value of our project and hopefully leave a better legacy within the communities where we're working. One other small thing that we do, which adds up very quickly, is we donate £200 to a local food bank for every scheme which is on site. And to give you an example of what that added up to last year, we donated £53,800 last year to local food banks in the direct areas where we're working.
Is that kind of community engagement happening in Europe, Nere?
I'm afraid the UK has the leadership on that. We, of course, share the knowledge, the experience that the UK team is having with the rest of the teams, and we are trying to speed up. But the reality is that these social value initiatives are much more implemented or are better implemented in the UK. More related to environmental sustainability, but we do have a lot of initiatives such as maintaining I think it was 108 olive trees that we bought in a plot that we developed, and we have maintained that. We have harvested the olives. We've done very nice olive oil that we sent to our customers and colleagues.
Are you getting more and more interest from your customers about this kind of biodiverse approach around your projects?
Yes, definitely yes. And we have to understand that their daily job is logistics and supply chain, and they come and ask a lot to the asset owner for these initiatives. It's time for us, for GLP, to be creative and find activities to offer to our customers, because they are more and more open to give back to the communities where they operate. So there is a great synergy there with GLP as landlord and our customers.
Okay. We can let's move on now and just talk about the emerging trends in logistics and some of the new approaches and how you can incorporate that into your designs that you're planning now. Stephen? Yeah,
there's multiple trends. The market never stands still, as you can appreciate. We touched on sustainability, but just to reiterate that sustainability is huge, not just for us, but for our customers as well. More and more customers are choosing locations and choosing buildings based on their credentials. One thing that we're finding is the labour pool is fairly tight in the UK, and customers need as much help as we can give them, really, to attract staff and to maintain staff or retain staff. So what we're focusing on and have been focusing on for a few years now is what facilities can we provide to our parks and to our buildings which will attract staff for customers and therefore attract customers to the buildings. And that might be walking paths around the outside of the park. That might be gyms in some of our buildings. And it's even the working environment, making sure there's the best quality of products, the most natural light within the buildings. And that really helps people attract staff and retain staff within their buildings. Another trend and another thing which we are getting more and more involved in is last mile logistics. It's urban logistics rather than the big boxes which we traditionally would have developed. We're now looking at the last mile aspect, and that's urban developments which are completely different. We need to take our big box hats off and look at what is needed. We're no longer having fleets of HGVs coming into the building. We're looking at a limited number of HGVs and maybe lots of vans or cargo bikes for that last mile into a city or an urban area. So that's a new trend, and it's something that we're adapting to and actively becoming involved in.
Is that driven by customer demand, or?
It's also shopper demand. You know, you and I'm sure you're the same as I, Paul, but there's barely a week goes past without a package coming from online shopping, and that all needs to come from somewhere, and the most efficient place for it to come from is a hub, a last mile hub within a city or within a town. And that's what we're adapting to. That's what we're now changing focus on. Although we will always do the big box element, we are making our way into that urban logistics scene as well.
Okay. Nere, what are some of the emerging trends that you can see?
Well, what Stephen has said, it's extremely obvious. We have now assets that are transportation links with trucks and cars and bikes and all kind of transportation models. So yeah, that's one of the challenges that we are facing, how to build assets that work for all those types of transportation systems. On top of that, for Europe, we are also increasing the height of our assets. In UK, they build much higher than we do in continental Europe. And we have seen obvious improvements in space efficiency for higher assets. On top of that, we have robotics and more sorting, new sorting systems. This leads to a higher usage of power in our assets. And this is the last step that GLP is doing. It's moving into renewables. We want our buildings to be sustainable. We want our customers to use green and clean energy, and PVs and renewable energies are the latest topic that GLP is developing.
PV is
solar panels.
Photovoltaic, yeah, solar panels there. And I was interested, yes, the extra height that you talked about, it seems counterintuitive, but that a few extra meters can increase the capacity by something like 50%. I found that surprising until you realise that obviously it's about the stacking and racking that you have going on inside the warehouses that makes that extra height space more valuable.
We did a research in Poland because the average height in Europe before it was 10 meters, and moving from 10 meters to 12 increases the 20% the capacity of a storage of a warehouse. This means, it's obvious, but it means that with the same square meters that our customers have rent, they have much more storage capacity, which is always interesting.
Okay. In terms of new developments and the new land that you need for developments, what changes are you seeing local authorities make in terms of their demands on you as a developer?
The landscape is challenging in the UK. Logistics doesn't seem to be prioritised as critical to the UK economy, and therefore the decisions for planning and the prioritisation for land for development is causing real issues. When you look at London, for example, much of the industrial land, the strategic industrial land in London, has been turned over to residential. And even when you're looking outside of towns and outside of cities, there are real barriers to actually developing land. We're working with various bodies to contribute to white papers, which will hopefully influence future planning and policies and decisions. But at the moment, there's a real shortage of land, and all that does is drive up the prices to buy the land, and therefore rental prices for customers.
Okay. What about in Europe, Nere? How are you seeing local authorities change their demands there?
Thanks to COVID, I have to say we are finally being seen. But again, there is a lot of effort in GLPs to try and explain how much logistics is needed, and to try and change the mindset of the authorities and people have on logistics assets. We are not dark, polluting buildings anymore. If you go to one of our sites, you will see we have nice parks, running paths. They're more and more electrified parkings. So again, this solar project that we are leading now, there are really interesting sites and job creating hubs, I would say.
So we're coming towards the end of the programme, but how do you see the next few months? How do you see 2022 developing? And what are some of your most immediate projects? Coming to you first, Nere.
Well, we have started a very exciting 2022 with 29 assets under development and a lot more on pre-construction. So busy days for GLP Europe and UK.
And Stephen?
We have a huge amount of work on just now. We've 10 sites on site just now. 8 of those will complete and be handed over by April, with a further 4 projects starting in April. And we currently have earthworks and enabling works on 15 buildings at the moment. So there's a huge amount of workload out there just now, and this year's going to be as busy as ever.
So more grey hairs and more sleepless nights.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, that's all we have time for today. My thanks to both of you, today's experts, Nere Herrera in Spain.
Thank you.
And Stephen Alexander here in the UK.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you for listening. My name is Paul Shearer. Thanks for listening to G-Talk Ask the Expert. Be sure to subscribe to future episodes wherever you download your podcasts from. And to find out more, visit the website at eu.glp.com.